Okay, AP, let's look at frames 340, 341, 342, and 343 in your packet. For frame 340, we need to retain two common tones in the same voices. If you look at the motion of the bass, we are moving by thirds. And when we do that, we can retain two common tones in the same voice. So, let's do number 1 in frame 340. So, let's make sure that we're building the correct triads because some of us are still confused with the triads we need to build. So take a look at the root. The root determines the triads. So here we have EGB. The next one is going to be ACE, and the next one will be EGB, similar to the first. Okay, once we do that, we need to also keep in mind now that we are going to be doubling the root and then providing 1/3 and 1/5. So, common tones between this first chord, which is C, E, G, and E, G, B. Well, E and G seem to be the common tones. So we can keep the E in the soprano, we can keep the G in the alto, and then we could slide the tenors down one step to the B. In the next one, the first triad given is FAC, the second one is AC. Common tones, F and A and C, A and C. So keep them in the same voice if they are common. Just like so. Tenors can go then sing the E. So we have the root doubled, and we have 1/3 and 1/5. In the next example, we have a G, B, D triad and an EGB triad we need to build. What are the common tones? G and B are common. So let's keep the G's and the B's in the same voice. Soprano's on a G, tenor's on a B. The altos would then need to change to double the root, because we need two roots, and they would sing the E. And that's how you would do frame 340. For frame 341, we are given a chord progression because we have a key signature and we also have to supply the Roman numeral analysis. So it's a little bit more in depth. So, take a look at our first triad. We have an F, C, F, A. That's going to be an FAC triad, and the key of F is our Roman numeral 1. The next one, the bass tells us what the triad is. So let's look, it's a D. So we need a DFA. DFA in the key of F is going to be our minor 6 chord. Now we have a B flat, DF. So B flat is the bass. That's the triad root. That's the 4 chord in the key of F. The next one is CEG. CEG in F major is our major 5. And then we're ending on an F in the bass. That looks like an FAC, major 1 in the key of F. Our Roman numeral analysis is done. Now we're simply going to look at the motion of the bass in the first measure. The basses are moving by the interval of 1/3. And when that happens, we are going to retain two common tones. So we'll keep the common tones in the same voice. What's the common tone for FAC and DFA? Well, it's the F and the A. So we'll keep the A in the soprano as the example already did for us. We'll put the F in the alto. And now let's look at our triad for a minute and realize that we have to double the root because it's not doubled yet. So that will be the tenor's responsibility for doubling the root. Now we have to go from a 6 chord to a 4 chord. That's also the bass motion right here of 1/3, which means you're going to retain two common tones. So we need to find the common tones from DFA and B flat DF. Well, it looks like it's going to be a D and an F. So let's keep the F in the alto and keep the D in the tenor. It's that simple. The 5 chord is next. We have a CEG to a 1 chord. That motion is moving by a 5th or a 4th, which means you're going to have How many tones in common? Well, let's figure this out. First, let's go from the 4 chord to the 5 chord. The 4 chord to the 5 chord, the bass is moving by second. When the bass moves by second, you have no common tones. So each voice is going to sing a different note here. And we want to go to the nearest chord tone. We need a C, E, G. So the altos will go from an F to an E. The tenors will go from a D to a C. Notice I've doubled the root, and I have the third, and I have the fifth. Okay, now for the last measure, we're going from 5 to the 1 chord. So my basses are on an F. I've doubled the F in the soprano. I need to have 1/3 and 1/5. So what's missing right now is the A and the C. Which voice, for the smoothest voice leading, should sing what? I don't want to put the altos on this A because that's too far of a leap. What I can do to make it smoother for the altos is to put them on the C. So I'm done with the C, I'm done with my Fs, and my tenors have to sing the A. And that interval of third is better than the altos singing that larger interval from before. And I think what happened is my bar line got erased. I think there's supposed to be a bar line there. And that's how you would complete frame 341. Now you should go back and you should make sure that there's no voice crossing. You should make sure that you have doubled the root where it needs to be doubled. You should make sure that you have retained common tones in the same voice. And sing through each voice part or play it on the piano to make sure it's a smooth transition that the voices will be comfortable with singing. Also, make sure that you have your minor triad of 6, DFA. All other triads are major. You don't need to add in accidentals here because you have the key signature. The B flat is written in the key signature. Also make sure, cross-reference each voice with each other. Make sure that you have no parallel fifths, parallel octaves, parallel unisons. And if you do this smooth voice leading, you won't run into a lot of difficulty. Okay, let's head on over to frame 342. We have to write in the alto and tenor voices, and we have to supply a Roman numeral analysis for the key of D major. Our first triad is D, F sharp, A, D. That's the 1. Our next one, it looks like we have an F sharp in the bass. When an F sharp's in the bass, then our triad must be F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. Okay, hang on a second, I need to plug in my computer before I run out of battery. Okay, so our next chord is F sharp, A, C sharp. That's going to be our minor 3. The bass is singing the G, which is the root, so that's going to be our G, B, D, which is the 4 chord in the key of D major, and it is a major chord. The next one, looks like I have an E in the bass, so I have E, G, B. E is our second scale degree in the key of D major, so we have a Roman numeral 2 and it's minor. And then we have an A, C sharp, E triad, which in the key of D is my major 5 chord. So now that we've established our Roman numerals, now we can go back and look at the motion of the bass to determine the part writing that we need to do. So, the bass is moving by a third. When the bass moves by a third, what happens? Well, we're going to have 2 common tones. That's something you should memorize. So we'll keep the common tones in the same voice. In this case, the common tones are going to be the D, the F sharp, which we can keep in the tenor, and the A in the alto. Next, our motion is going from a 3 to a 4. That's a motion of a second. When you have a motion of a second, you have no common tones. So the bass is moving up. It might make sense to move every other voice part down in contrary motion to the bass. So we need G, B, D. That would be nice for the altos to sing. And this would be nice for the tenors to sing. Notice there's no common tones here between these two because the bass is moving by a second. Now in the next example, the bass is moving by thirds. See that? That's a third, which means you'll have two common tones. So keep the common tones in the same voice. E, G, B. And then for our last chord, we have the 5 chord. We need an A, C sharp, E. Retain the common tone. Move the other voices to the nearest voice part. And we're done. Almost. We need to go back and do a double check to make sure that we've doubled the root in all chords and follow all your other voice part writing principles. After that, then we're officially done. Let's look at frame 343. Okay, we are in the key of A minor. Our first triad is A, C, E. Our next triad is F, A, C. The next one, D, F, A. The next one, E, G sharp, B. Why G sharp? Because of the figured bass sharp sign. I think this is harmonic minor. The last chord, F, A, C. So now let's plug in our Roman numerals, since we know that we're in the key of A minor. First chord, A, C, E. That's our minor 1. Next chord, F, A, C. That's major 6th in A minor. Here's our 4 chord, D, F, A. That's minor. This is going to be our major 5 chord, E, G sharp, B. And we'll end with our F, A, C, which is our major 6th chord. Once we've done that, we're just about ready to determine how the bass moves. In the first example, we're going from the 1 chord to the 6th chord. So the bass is moving by that of a third, which means you can retain 2 common tones in the same voices. So, let's have the tenors sing the A, and we'll have the altos sing the F. They can double the root. Now we have to go from a 6 chord to a 4 chord. That's also going to be 2 common tones because the bass is moving by that interval of a third. So we'll keep the common tones in the same voices. The A can sing the tenor can sing the A, and the alto can sing the F. Beautiful. The next one, we're going from a 4 chord to a 5 chord. The bass moves by the interval of a second. What does that mean? That means there will be no common tones when the bass moves by the interval of a second. So you're going to need to move to the nearest chord tone. So we need E, G sharp, B. So my altos can go down to the E and double the bass, which is the root, and my tenors can go sing the G sharp. Make sure that you put a G sharp sign there. That makes a lot more sense than having the tenors having these voices switch, because I don't want my tenors to sing the E and go up and sing that leap of a fifth. Okay? And then we look at our ending, and we have to go from the 5 chord to the 6 chord. which, by the way, we're going to learn soon. When you have a closing progression, a closing cadence that goes from the 5 chord to the 6 chord, that is called a deceptive cadence. And we'll talk about that later. So the 5 chord to the 6 chord, the bass is moving by the interval of a second. So what we're going to do is the bass is singing the F, which is the root. Then it looks as if we're in harmonic minor, so we might have an irregularity of doubling here. Let's first decide that we're going to double the root. And we'll put that right here next to the bass so the tenor can sing the root. So the root is doubled, we have the third. Now we'll need to add in the fifth, which could be supplied by the altos. We cannot double the root in this case. The tenors are not allowed to sing that F because of this G sharp. That would be an augmented second, so we can't have that. Which means, yes, we need to do an irregularity of doubling. Which means the tenors will sing the third, and the third is doubled. 1/5 and only 1 root. And that is acceptable because we have to avoid that augmented second interval in minor, harmonic minor keys when we have going from the 5 chord to the 6 chord. So I'm hoping that this is making more and more sense and we're clearing up any confusion that we might be experiencing.